Now then guys, I've had a few messages since I posted the last couple of videos. Also I'm seeing quite a few questions on the Facebook groups, all regarding AR-15's in WMR. So I've had a look around, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of info knocking about out there. So I figured I'd make a video, kind of give a rough overview of the calibre and the rifles, kind of share my experience with you. I'm not going to go into massive technical details, start talking about kind of peak chamber pressures and stuff like that, because enough people think I'm a fucking nerd as it is. But I've been shooting the gun for a good few years now, so hopefully I'll be able to answer a few of your questions. So to start with, if you're unfamiliar with what WMR actually is, it's this little guy right here. You might hear it called 22 Magnum, 22 Mag, 22 Win Mag, WMR, it's all the same thing, Winchester Magnum rimfire. And the reason it's gaining quite a lot of traction in the UK at the minute is because it's a 22 rimfire cartridge, like a 22 long rifle, so you can use it in semi-automatic platforms. But it's got quite a bit more energy than the 22 long rifle, which gives it some advantages and also some disadvantages as well. So when it comes to ARs, certainly in the UK, you might hear people say that WMR kind of bridges the gap between 22 long rifle and 223 rifles, which is true to an extent, but it does sit way further down towards the 22 long rifle in terms of actual ballistics and performance. I think a 223 is kind of knocking out what, 1,000, 1,500 potentially foot-pounds at the muzzle. Even the middle of the road gun's going to shoot out well to kind of 500 yards. It's a completely different animal really. And besides, the whole reason you're going to get a WMR is because you want something semi-auto. So if we're going to compare it to anything, it's got to be a 22 long rifle. So in terms of muzzle energy, well, if we take a 40 grain bullet for each calibre, which is what both calibers were designed around, we see a 22 long rifle right down the bottom end of the spectrum, kind of subsonic, you're looking around 90 foot-pounds, up to the higher velocity stuff, around 150 foot-pounds at the muzzle. You might get, a couple of rounds either side of that, but that's kind of the bulk of it. Now compare that to WMR, you're looking around 280 to 320 foot-pounds, so it's got between 2 to 3 times the energy. Even made you a table and everything, pretty proud of that. Obviously that means that the WMR is moving a lot faster than the 22 long rifle in terms of velocity, so even a high velocity 22 40 grain is going to be looking about 12 to 1,300 feet per second at the muzzle. Now you compare that to the same weight round in a WMR, you're kind of looking between 18 to 1,900 feet per second. So there's a massive speed advantage there. Massive speed advantage. So with those velocities in mind, just be aware there's no subsonic loadings for WMR. Everything's going to be supersonic, everything's going to have that sonic crack. You can put a suppressor on the rifle, no problem, it'll run fine, just a little bit more back pressure. But in terms of if you're hunting, or maybe you're shooting in residential areas, or maybe after dark you just want to go, oh, Sam Fisher, just keep it in mind. So in terms of available bullet weights, how do the calibers kind of stack up against each other? Well, they're both designed around 40 grain, like you said, but the WMI 40 grain is obviously a staple. There's a lot of 30 grain knocking about, the kind of ballistic tips, that's quite common, and you also get 45 and 50 grain as well. I've not seen anything kind of either side of the 30 or 50, and with 22 long rifle, obviously 40 grain is your staple, lots of 30 grain knocking about and kind of everything in between. But you even get some kind of niche kind of weights as well, like the CCI make a 20 grain, really fast compressed copper round, right up to the kind of Aguila 60 grain, Aguila, I never know how to say that, 60 grain rounds as well. So on to bullet design. This is where the WMR kind of sits apart from the 22 long rifle, in that it's a lot closer to most centerfire rifle cartridges, and that it has a proper copper jacket around it. So this just allows you to have kind of different designs with your rounds, so you can have like the 30 grain ballistic tips. I've had some 30 grain with just a really deep hollow point in there, and you can have proper full metal jackets, things like that. Also as well, people say you get a little bit more leads, a little bit less lead smearing down the barrel if you've got a proper copper jacket rather than just that shitty copper wash you get on 22 long rifle, but take that for what you will. So in terms of kind of how clean the rounds are to actually shoot, they're both going to be dirty in semi-automatics, no doubt. But I will say the WMR seems to be a lot dirtier than 22 long rifle. In fact, I'd say it's probably the dirtiest calibre I've ever shot. So you're definitely going to need a good cleaning regime, and it's certainly if you're shooting suppressed. I mean, shooting suppressed, there's a lot more back pressure. It's absolutely filthy. So yeah, get yourself a good cleaning regime. So the big one is ammo cost, and this is where WMR just runs up and punches you right in the dick. I've been shooting this calibre for the best part of 3 years now, and I'd say of all the ammo I've ever bought, it's always running about 28 to 30 pence a shot for WMR. It's only just recently that it seems to have come down kind of this year. I've managed to get some for about 22 pence a shot, but that was only one brand in one shop. The rest of it's all still well above 25p that I've seen anyway. But compare that to 22 long rifle. I'm picking up decent 22 long rifle, runs well in a semi-auto for 5 pence a round. So you're looking at a 4-to-1 ratio there, which is it's a big consideration. It's probably the biggest consideration with these guns, the cost of the ammo. So anyone who who's struggling to picture that 4-to-1 ratio, this is a real world example of that running drills. So yeah, I'd definitely say that ammo cost is a big factor if you're considering buying one of these. But I know for you lads down south, obviously money's no object. You're slinging pound notes around like confetti at a wedding. But for us northern kids, it's a bit of pill to swallow. And something else as well, guys, is ammo availability. So like where I am, my local RFDs don't really stock a lot of WMR. It's kind of in dribs and drabs. So if I want any kind of great selection or quantity, I have a bit of a round trip. So that's something else to consider as well. Right then guys, I think that's kind of covered everything you need to know about the calibre. Let's move on and talk about some fucking guns. Some fucking guns. So guys, if you're in the market for a WMR in the UK, chances are you're going to be wanting something like this, an AR-15, which if not, you're probably watching the wrong video. There are kind of other platforms out there. This little Kel-Tec's a pretty good example of that. There's some others out there, CZ and things like that make some as well. But the most popular option by far is an AR-15. So right now, September 2020, if you want a WMR AR, you're limited to 2 companies in the UK. The first being Northwest Custom Parts, the second being Guncraft. Now, just this week actually, I've heard a few people say that Northwest, they're no longer producing these rifles. But then again, I've had someone message me and say they're picking theirs up next week. So make of that what you will. Get on the blower, find out yourselves. But yeah, it's Northwest and Guncraft are making these. Now, in terms of actual how the rifles operate, both rifles are pretty much identical. They work from a direct blowback action, just like your 22 long rifles, but it's just a bit beefed up. So you've got a heavier bolt and a heavier buffer spring just to deal with the energy of that WMR. So a little bit of history for you. Northwest Custom Parts were the first UK company to offer these rifles, and their guns use the Raven hardware, which is designed in America as a dedicated side charger. Northwest imported them over here, converted them to top charging them, and sold them on the UK market. Guncraft has kind of improved upon the kind of design of it. I think they've added a bit more functionality to the rifles. You've got things like working dust cover and also forward assist, that type of thing. They also have a manual bolt hold open whereby you can manually hold the bolt open. Look at that, and drop it. Whereas you don't get any of that with the Northwest Custom Parts rifles. So apart from that little bit of extra functionality on the Guncraft, there's not much difference between the rifles. They're both kind of mil-spec AR-15s. You can put whatever stocks and grips and, whatever tactical little bits you want on the rifle to impress your friends. If you've got any, argue over what's better, your Geisley rail or your Daniel Defence rail, Obviously it's Daniel Defence, guys, everyone knows that. Fucking come on. Now I should actually say that my rifle is actually running the Raven hardware bought from Northwest Custom Parts. I originally bought this as just a bare upper receiver to run on a lower I already had. There was no handguard or anything like that or furniture with it. It was just purely a barrel, a bolt and a buffer with an upper receiver. But since everything's been pretty much changed and fettled with, I mean, you might be wondering, in fact, you can actually see here, look, this drilled and tapped hole here is where the side charging handle would go on the original Ravens. But anyway, I've added the dust cover functionality myself and the forward assist functionality myself, because, you know, I'm just kind of sad like that, really. You may have heard some kind of horror stories when it comes to reliability about these rifles. Certainly in the early days that was true, and I can 100% attest to that. My rifle was an absolute fuck pig. It wouldn't make it more than like 3 rounds without some kind of spectacular failure. I've had them all, everything you can think of. This rifle has done it. It took me a lot of time and effort to kind of get this running reliably. Still has the occasional hiccup from time to time, but I think that's just kind of part of the course of these. And for the most part, I think that the reliability issues have kind of been ironed out now. Certainly hearing good things from people who are running the new gun crafts. They don't seem to be reporting any real major issues, so that's certainly a step in the right direction there. So just a quick note before we move on about aftermarket parts in these guns, specifically triggers. I've personally experienced this, and I know a lot of other people have, is when you put in aftermarket triggers in these guns, you often get issues with light strikes. I know in Raven's website he had a dedicated page to actually triggers that wouldn't work in the gun, specifically things like CMC, Dual and a few others. And I also know 1 or 2 guys with the gun crafts who've actually had issues with aftermarket triggers, and it's light strikes. I would get a light strike probably every 2 to 3 magazines, and it's obviously ammo dependent and things like that. But it might just be worth, you know, checking out, making sure the trigger's going to work in the gun before you spend your money on it. Another thing as well, quickly, is buffer tubes and certainly buffers and springs and things. These guns are designed to work with a specific buffer weight and buffer spring ratio, and tube length. So don't go sticking on, you know, different tubes, different lengths especially, or buffers, thinking you can do that, because you're just going to ruin the gun. It's not going to run properly. You might get excessive bolt travel, which might lock up and things like that. So just be aware of that. Right then, let's move on and talk about magazines. So the only option for both of these rifles at the minute is these Black Dog 14 rounders, which is a real shame because, to be honest, they're absolute shit. Very flimsy, very prone to misfeeding. In fact, I'd say that the majority of the malfunctions you're going to get with these rifles are going to be down to the magazines. So I know Rob at Guncraft is now offering some extended feed lips for these magazines, which stops one of the issues, which is the rounds kind of flipping up and getting trapped by the bolt. And from what I hear from people who are using them, they seem to have done the trick, so that's definitely a step in the right direction. So yeah, the magazines are kind of a big point of contention with these rifles. You know, 14 round capacity, not the most reliable, you know, not the best build quality either, certainly when you compare it to something like this, a Smith & Wesson 1522 M&P mag. In terms of like design and build quality, these are just absolutely worlds apart. Nice solid construction, a box spring, proper last round functionality, you know. Then you go and get something like this, which looks like it's been kind of knocked up on a Friday afternoon for everyone to the pub. It's a real shame really, but hey, it's what you got. Something else to consider if you're thinking about picking up one of these rifles in WMR is that there is currently no true last round bolt hold open on the guns. So if you're familiar with the AR platform in pretty much any caliber from 22 upwards, when you fire your last round, the bolt comes back and the magazine follower will trip the bolt hold open and it'll lock the bolt back into place. You can drop your magazine, stick a fresh one in, and all you need to do is hit the paddle and drop the bolt. It makes reloads really fast. It's super easy. I think it's probably one of the best features of the AR in my opinion. Now, currently with the WMR system that we have in the UK, what happens is you fire, I'll bring this close to the camera. So you fire your last round and the bolt comes back. The follower jumps up and the bolt actually kind of jams up on the follower there. Now, it's okay, you get to know that you're out of ammunition, but if you want to drop your magazine, it won't fall free because obviously it's pinned by the bolt. So you have to rip your magazine out, which will then drop the bolt, like that. To put a fresh magazine in, and then charge the gun afresh. So it's not ideal. I know the Guncraft rifles, they have a manual bolt hold open, so you can pull the charging handle all the way back and kind of manually lock the bolt to the rear. But again, it's not ideal, I wouldn't say, but it's a step in the right direction for sure. So if you've seen any of my other videos, I'll put a link to them somewhere. You'll know that I've modified my rifle and my magazines so that they actually have a proper bolt hold open function with them. It's pretty simple really. When you're out of ammo, you fire your last round, your bolt locks open, you drop the magazine out, the bolt stays open, you stick your next magazine in, you drop the bolt, and away you go. Just like any other AR-15. Again, I'm a bit sad like that, I like to do things like this. So guys, what you all no doubt want to know is kind of how does the gun feel from a shooter's perspective, how does the gun perform? And this is, I think, where the WMR really comes into its own. So from a shooter's perspective, it's definitely a much more lively experience than shooting 22 long rifle. You know, you get quite a lot more feedback in your shoulder from the gun with that big heavy bolt knocking about in there. A little bit more muzzle rise, not masses, still on your rimfire. But yeah, a lot more noise as well. It just generally feels a bit more like a big boy gun. It's kind of definitely a step closer to shooting like a 223 centre fire if you've ever done that abroad. So with the extra energy and velocity that you get out of a WMR compared to a 22 long rifle, it certainly helps you reach out to greater distances. This is some footage of Dean Harms from Harms Arms, who was kind of instrumental in the development of the Guncraft rifles. This is him shooting out to 300 yards accurately. You can see his groups that he's getting. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of bullet drop at that range. The WMR was never really designed to be kind of used as a long range round, but it proves that it's definitely doable and that these guns are definitely an accurate platform. So in terms of accuracy, is it an accurate platform and caliber? Yeah, absolutely. Inside its kind of operating envelope, it really is. I know from kind of zeroing my gun at 100 yards that with the right ammo and the right conditions, inch groups all day long, not a problem. And that's with me behind the trigger, so actual good shooters will probably be able to narrow those down considerably. So I know hunting's not everyone's thing, but if you do want to hunt with this rifle in this caliber, it's a great option for UK ground game, certainly kind of out to about 150 yards, even for foxes and things like that. You can deliver accurate round placement and enough energy to knock your target down and deliver a nice, clean, humane kill with them. If you're going to be kind of only taking rabbits inside of, say, 50 yards, then you might find it's a little bit too much gun for the job. Certainly if you're going to want to be eating what you shoot. And something else to remember as well is, if you're hunting with it, is obviously you can suppress the gun, but it's still going to be a lot louder than a 22 long rifle. Kind of in terms of sound levels, think of a suppressed HMR basically. You still get that big sonic crack down range. So just quickly guys, before I wrap things up, we'll talk about costs. So the Guncraft rifle's going to run you about 1,600 quid. Northwest Custom Parts still well north of £1,000, and that's for the base rifles. So you start adding bits to them and speccing them up, obviously that cost is going to go up. So definitely more than a kind of mil-spec 22 long rifle for sure. But like anything, you know, you can spec it up to whatever, you know, kind of whatever spec you want, whatever price point you want. So overall, I think WMR is definitely a decent platform. It certainly fills a niche in the UK. It's not without its flaws for sure, but it's definitely a fun gun to shoot, and it gives you some added capability compared to a 22 long rifle. It's maybe not the best gun if you're just starting out to get. I'd maybe stick with a 22 long rifle and kind of go from there. But if you're looking for something a little bit more lively, or you know, if you've been shooting 22 for a while and you're just a little bit bored of it, maybe it's definitely an option worth considering, guys. So anyway guys, I hope that's answered some of the questions you might have had about the WMR, and you know, if it's something you're considering, that might give you a bit more info on the subject. If there's anything else you want to ask, any questions you've got or anything like that, answer them in the comments below. You know, I'm always willing to help people out. And if you like watching me sat in front of a black curtain in my garage chatting shit about guns, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel. Probably going to be more bits and pieces in future. And if you don't, then you probably shouldn't be watching this far anyway. Should probably sign off with something like a cool catchphrase like all the other ones do. Shoot safe. Fucking terrible. No true last round bolt open. Bolt open. Brilliant. Wow. It's like Brangelina. Now compare that to 22 long rifle. Fucked it already. This is really fucking hard, actually. Oh no, Callum's losing his hair.